For some reason, my Bluetooth was off. I don't know why.
Oh, all right. I mean, that happens to the best of us. I mean, you're an older man now, so I guess like you get a little forgetful in your old age.
Eh, where do I put this at? Where do I put this thing at?
Yeah. Well, well, let's call a spade a spade. I am older than you, so like I'm used to like having coping mechanisms to like just like keep the anxiety demons away about like, oh no, I'm getting older, I'm getting older, I'm getting older. What usually works for me is like a nice cup of coffee, putting on a good record, and like just good old family time on the porch with the dogs and the wife, and yeah, that's how I get by.
That is how you get by, and you know what? I'm not even gonna try. Just do the damn intro.
Welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that is we go from Ukraine to Uganda, but we take the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And the two men that you're listening to right now are two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I am the one who has way too many cups of coffee in a day, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the I don't need coffee. I run on existence and anxiety, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what it is we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's right there in the title. It's Hey, Listen to This. Me and Ryan look at each other every week, ask each other to listen to something, that something being a music album. And we talk about the tracks on the album, what we like, what we don't like, what we think stands out for better or worse. And we got a couple of episodes to recap, Ryan, because we were not quote-unquote off last week, but we did not review an album last week, so it's been a couple weeks since we've done a full review. What have we been up to in the last couple weeks?
So, well, I'll start with the week, the most recent episode. We did the Elton John discography draft, and once again, you kicked my butt and, made me cry. I'm still crying about that right now, but, I'm formulating, I'm training, I'm getting stronger, day by day, I'm getting better, so... And then, that was a lot of fun to do. I encourage our listeners out there right now who are listening to this episode, if you want to, you can take a quick 27-minute detour and go listen to that discography draft, and learn, a thing or two about, different albums within Elton's discography. But, in the episode prior to that one, we reviewed the debut album by Suede, which was it's self-titled, that was released back in the early '90s, and for me, it was an awesome time going into that album because my listening habits as of late have been more zeroed in on Britpop, and it was nice to bring a band to the table here that I feel like that deserves a little bit more attention. So yeah, I was a huge fan of doing that review. What were your thoughts about doing the discography draft and then doing Suede by Suede?
It was interesting doing the Elton draft because as I had made mention during it, Elton John, for the most part, at least throughout the majority of his career, has been more or less a singles artist. Like, people know his songs more than his albums, so it was going to be interesting to find out which of his albums with classic tracks did better than the others. Not to mention some of his lesser-known albums, and if they stacked up to his more well-known collections of songs, because if we had included greatest hits with the Elton John discography draft, whoever drafted that number one was probably going to win. But as far as Suede, I really liked that album, and I liked it more and more with each listen, because you can hear the roots of not just Britpop specifically, but the 90s sound overall. You know, these lush, broad stroke arrangements, mixed with very sort of echoey, occasionally overproduced, but purposefully so, vocals. And again, if you ever wanted to know what the 90s sounded like, or at least what the 90s sounded like in the UK, because over in America it was a bit more of a mixed bag, Suede would be a good place to start, because if you started with something like Oasis, you might be diving a little too deep into the deep end. Start with Suede. It's nice to understand the roots of a rather non-rootsy music, if you will.
Yeah, and fun fact about Suede, that band specifically, they're coming out with an album this year. They actually, I think it was either today or yesterday, they released another single from that album called "Dancing with the Europeans," if I'm not mistaken. But I digress. We're not going to be dancing with any Europeans in this episode. So yeah, Matt. Instead of dancing with some Europeans, what are we going to be doing with this week's episode?
Well, we are going from European to Tennessean, and one Tennessean in particular, and that is the man born Jason Bradley DeFord in 1984, but most people these days know him as Jelly Roll. Now, what is a Jelly Roll? That is a very good question, because that takes the form of multiple answers, because he was formerly a rapper, he is currently a country singer, currently mixing in gospel with his country sound, was formerly in prison, was formerly baptized, and perhaps has a future in professional wrestling. But for the sake of this review, we're going to focus on mainly his music career. So, Jelly Roll, born in 1984 in December. I'm not a horoscope person, Ryan. You could probably detect which brand of sign he is. But he was born in Antioch, and he was baptized at the age of 14, spent pretty much the next 10 years in prison for various crimes, and then coming out of prison, he started his rap career, being inspired by southern rappers such as UGK, 3 6 Mafia, etc., and had different mixtapes, because this was back in the era of the mixtape. If you weren't on a major label, you didn't care. You put your stuff on DatPiff and hope that somebody would pick it up, and if enough people picked it up, you know, soon you'd get Facebook and Twitter, and all of a sudden the underground world of hip-hop became much more of a mainstream thing. And it wasn't until a few years ago they switched from hip-hop to a country sound. And he had a few different CDs in that regard. Ballads of the Broken was his 8th studio album, and pretty much the song that propelled him into a country star with the song Son of a Sinner. And ever since then, he has been riding the country, folk, gospel wave that has propelled him into one of music's biggest stars. Now, my experience with Jelly Roll I'll get to, but first, Ryan, I'll let you discuss your background with Jelly Roll up until this review.
So I'm going to answer one of the questions that you kind of left lingering there. Jelly Roll's astrological zodiac sign, he's a Sagittarius. So, I mean, for those of you who are like chomping at the bit to know, like, you know, what his zodiac sign was, there you go. And in terms of my background with Jelly Roll prior to this review, like I said at the end of the Suede review that we did, I've always been, like, you know, kind of curious about his music And I've never heard a single song from him prior to diving into the album that we're talking about today, which is Beautifully Broken. And yeah, uh, that's basically it. I've just been optimistically curious, to put it in like a very plain sense. I knew that he was very much like a poppy kind of country guy, at least from what I was able to gather. Had like maybe like some rapper elements to him, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, on a musical standpoint, I've just been optimistically curious about him.
And for me, my experience with Jelly Roll is a bit mixed. I first heard his name pop up at the end of 2023, or maybe 2022, whichever one it was, where Son of a Sinner appeared at the 10 spot on the Best of the Year list by Todd and the Shadows, only for so much time later to pass. And last year he was featured twice on his worst lists as in a featuring role. But overall, that was pretty much all I had known about Jelly Roll up to that point. I mean, I had heard like rumblings about him and who he was and what he is. But it really wasn't until this year that I started to get a little bit more familiar with Jelly Roll, particularly because I switched jobs twice. And the job I'm currently at is part of several radio stations, one of them being a country station, which I have listened to a lot while at work, and therefore I've listened to a lot of Jelly Roll at work, including a pair of songs from this album that I've heard at least once a day for the last month at least, possibly two. So I've started to get more into his music and sort of understanding who he is and all the different crazy things he's done. But overall, that's about it too. So, like you, I was optimistically curious. I'm thinking, okay, I know what this guy is kind of about. You know, he's got the face tattoos. He's got the very raspy but very passionate singing voice. You know, he blends all these genres together. What's it all about? And I think we're going to be talking a lot about that today on this episode of Hey Listen to This. And for the record, we are going to be discussing his latest album, released in October of 2024. His 10th studio album, by the way, which is called Beautifully Broken. And for the record, we are only talking about the main album. We are talking about the first 14 tracks. We're not doing deluxe editions or special iTunes editions or underground double secret probation tracks. We're not doing any of that. We are sticking with the first 14. So, with that being said, Ryan, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we jump right into it?
No, I mean, like, the only other things that are basically in my brain are, this might be a very funny or, humorous thing to say, but, I've always kind of, maybe grouped Jelly Roll in with the category of, musicians, Post Malone, where I'm like, oh, yeah, he seems like a nice guy, and he seems like a fun time, and there might be, a couple tracks here or there that I can really get into, so there's that. And also, dear listener, if you're listening to this on the YouTubes, and you really, are really passionate about Jelly Roll in this album, if you guys want us to cover the full gamut of the deluxe editions, make sure you like this video. If it gets to 100 likes, yeah, we could do a special redo review here and go back to this album and cover every single track that's ever been produced in terms of a release format for this album. But yeah, I figured I'd throw that out there.
I like that wager. I like that. This could be my accidental Sable Fable when it all turns out. But we can go ahead and get started, and we'll go ahead and get started with the opening track off of Beautifully Broken, which is Winning Streak, and immediately the cards are on the table because you have this rather sparse, very backwoods church type of backing with the gospel singers, the type of percussion that I'll be referencing a lot in this review, which is Stomp Clap. Very heavy on the rootsiness of the drums and the production. And the other cards that are on the table are of the lyrical content, which deals with Joey Roll admitting himself into AA and not realizing that, this is going to be as painful as it is. He didn't realize he was going to get to AA. He never thought he would be sitting down and saying, "Hi, I'm Jason." He didn't realize that, this is going to be as tough as it was. And he felt ashamed about it until he met a man who said, "Hey, nobody walks through these doors on a winning streak. I made it 20 years clean. Anybody can do it." And just that message alone is such a strong and wonderful opening to this album, because a lot of times, especially in the stomp clap folk genre, as we've talked about prior with Mumford & Sons on Babel, a lot of times the genericism, the spiritual overtones seem to take over, and it feels more genuine than it is. Here, it's genuine. You could definitely tell that he is putting himself out there and saying, "Listen, these are my struggles. This is me struggling with my struggles and trying to get clean. And I'm not liking it, but at the same time, I know I can do it." And it sounds really good, too. Like, he's singing real good. The background singers on the chorus are doing a really good job. I do like the at the ends of verses where he talks and says, "Hi, I'm Jason," and it works very well. So the only real nitpick I have about the song is that, for as rootsy and as deep and personal as it is, there are some times, particularly at the end of the second chorus, where it gets a little on the synthetic side, where it feels like it's being overproduced just a titch. And it's just that titch that knocks it from what would have been my favorite track to my second favorite track. This is my second favorite track off the whole album, and for the first time in a while, I think, I have the full gamut of a top 3 and a bottom 3. Again, Winning Streak comes in at number 2.
So yeah, with Winning Streak, a couple of things I want to comment on. That you kind of laid the framework out there very awesomely. I agree with you that the whole spoken word bit, when you hear the little vocal samples of "Oh hey, hey everybody, my name's Jason," those little samples that you reference, those are really solid. And funny thing about that is I'm like, "Who's Jason?" And then I'm like, "Wait, hold on, that's his actual name. Don't be an idiot, Ryan. No one names their kid righteously Jelly Roll." Actually, I shouldn't say that. That might be ignorant.
Yeah, remember, Gwyneth Paltrow still exists on this earth, but please continue.
So, yeah. And the lyrical content is really solid. There's something you mentioned about, him going to AA and that gentleman that he meets was 20 years sober, the whole winning streak motif. That is really nice. And for me, I really liked the second verse, specifically on a lyrical front, where Jelly's looking in the mirror and being talking about the broken man in the mirror, and how this person's trying to kill him. So that was a very, very nice sentiment, and I did like that. So here is where the big but comes into fashion here. You mentioned you kind of hinted, well, you did mention the only thing that kept this from being your favorite track was the overproduction on it. And for me, I couldn't really overlook it, to be honest with you. I know this album's not produced by Jack Antonoff, but it feels like it. Specifically with this track here, where it's just I get it. You get that big chorus and everything like that, and you get the gospel choir. But for me, there was just something kind of lacking about it. And sure, Jelly's doing a awesome job, on the vocal front. like he's sounding good, but like there was just like there's a little bit of that black pepper spice that was missing. It wasn't really connecting for me, and I mean, it could just be personal preference. I mean, I will say coming out right out of the gate, like this kind of music, like pop, country, gospel, whatever kind of fusion this is, it's not really up my wheelhouse. So maybe that's probably where I'm getting the disconnect from. But yeah, this track didn't land in This track didn't land in a bottom three for me. But honestly, well, no, my bottom three tracks are, like, they actually made me angry. This track didn't make me angry. It was pretty average, to be honest with you. In terms of, like, there was a couple things here or there that were very positive, but the overall package, like, I'm not going to be revisiting Winning Streak anytime soon. But, yeah, and, in terms of my full gamut, yeah, I have a top three and a bottom three with this review.
The fact that you said there are tracks that make you angry, like, I am fully prepared for what kamikaze chaos is about to come from your side of this discussion. Though I'm very glad that this is not in your bottom three, because not just because I think it's a really good song, at least for this album, but I cannot imagine, there being. My bottom three, I look at that and I look at this song, there's just no way these three tracks on any day lose out to this. So, yeah, we'll get to my bottom three in due time.
And to be perfectly honest with you, my bottom three as well, I don't picture them taking up your first and your top or third favorite track, and if they do, I mean, I stand corrected, but I think we might be aligned with, especially with my bottom track, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen in regards to that. But the next track here is Burning, and for me, we get the momentum picked up with Burning here. I feel like the production's a little bit tighter in terms of that dizzying guitar riff that you get coming right out of the gate, and I also liked how the chorus really, the track is called Burning, and it just pops where you get the effect, oh hey, you can almost picture pyro going off in the background with Jelly, in terms of a music video kind of aspect. So I thought that was pretty solid. The verses are pretty solid. Jelly's giving a decent performance. I mean, you get lyrics about more coming out of the gate. I got violence on the brain. I learned to love the taste. I did like the section towards the end of the first verse where he's talking about where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's fire, there's a liar. I thought that was a nice little section there on the lyrical front. So that was pretty nice. And the only other thing I really gotta say about this song is I feel like the chorus gets a little bit wordy, and I mean, I guess the main message of the chorus is I'm burning here, and that's fine, but it just, I don't know, I feel like he could have done with less in that chorus to make it a little punchier. Maybe just have the chorus actually just be I'm burning here. That would have been fun. Fun, that's a weird way to talk about the phrase I'm burning here. But yeah, and diving into the lyrical front, it just seems like this song is basically a plea from himself for somebody to come and save him from himself. And I'm not going to try to stretch a narrative through line with this record, because there's some points here or there where you get the through line, but then there's some tracks that are just sprinkled in just for the sake of just creating a track. But this definitely would play off of the opening track here. The only other thing I gotta really say about Burning before I kick it over to you is just Jelly again sounds fine, but he's just missing that spice to really just make it punchy and like really connect the dots for me in terms of like really taking the song to the next level. But overall, like the song again, not a bottom track for me. I would maybe put it, like I said, a titch higher than a Winning Streak.
I am not going to put it a titch higher than Winning Streak. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that you said that I don't really agree with. And again, we have the right to disagree with each other here on this show. But as you were rattling off all the things that you sort of liked about this track, I was thinking, eh. Because I will say that for me, this did not pick up the momentum of the album. It kind of brought things down a little bit because the first word you said in your lyrical analysis is the biggest problem I have with this song, and that is basically. This is a very basic song to me. Like with Winning Streak, you hear him talk through his depths and sort of write out his thoughts on paper. Here, this just seems like generic. I'm dealing with struggles. I'm burning. I was not a fan of the where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's fire, there's a liar lines. I did not really like that much at all. And personally, I think he's over singing a little bit on the chorus. There's going to be a few times on this album where Jelly Roll sort of jumps into the upper register or tries to sing the high notes. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Here it kind of doesn't. And it feels the whole thing feels very generic, feels like, and you talk about it being unspicy. I think you're right on that. I think it's a little unspiced, but I think it's just pretending to be spicy, particularly when he's like, really shouting on those choruses. And realistically, in the 3 playthroughs I have done of this album since we decided we're going to talk about it, every time I get more and more disinterested with this song, to the point where I was just like, if I can't remember a song halfway through listening to it, then it's got to be a bottom track. So this isn't my bottom 3 at number 3.
All right, so slight disagreement, but not a huge one because kind of evident that I didn't put this in a top track territory. So yeah, a lot of points that you made, I agree with. Like, it's a very by the numbers, like a run of the mill, like generic country pop. I don't even know what to classify Jelly Roll in this sense. I'm just gonna call it country pop, even though that could be a genre, like mislabel, but just to keep things more coherent from my end here. So, yeah, I can totally respect your take on Burning. Are you ready to switch on over to the next track here?
Yes, the next track off Beautifully Broken is Heart of Stone, and I'm just going to come out and say it. Of all the songs on this album that I have listened to before doing this album, this is the one I have heard the most. I have heard this... I feel like they've played, because I work an 8-hour shift, and I think I've heard this song at least a minimum 2 times per day during those 8-hour shifts. And just on that alone, it almost like broke down the bricks to pummel its way into the top 3. But it didn't. It is not a top track. But it's close. It's close. Because there's something about the way he sings on the choruses that seems very calm and relaxing. Like, he sounds more in tune with his vocals like he did on Winning Streak. And granted, the lyrics are kind of generic again, but a little bit more deep this time. Particularly how, he sings on the chorus that he's wide awake and he's dreaming, and you can't turn a heart of gold out of this heart of stone. And it almost feels like a sequel to his other songs that he's had on the radio, whether it be Son of a Sinner or an even bigger one, which is Need a Favor, another song I've heard quite a bit over the last couple months. And it is very much, to me, designed to be a single. It's got the verses, it's got the big old chorus, and it's got, pretty much that going for it. It's not a lyrical masterpiece by any means, but to me it kind of sounds like Mumford & Sons on steroids. And like I said, Jelly Roll sings good on the verses. He slightly over-sings on the chorus. Not too much to make me knock it down a whole lot. But I thought it was a solid performance. And again, I would probably put this maybe like a 4 or maybe even a 5 as far as rankings 1 through 14. Like this is a single on country radio and a successful one for a good reason. It's got juice. It may not be a whole lot of like pulp in that fruit, but it's got juice.
Oh man, shout out to Pulp, both in the orange juice form and in the musical form. So yeah, man, this shows like how much out of touch I am with like radio, well, like even more specifically like country radio, because like I had no idea that this song was a single, but in hindsight, yeah, it makes sense, especially with that chorus, and I'll start there with talking about that chorus. I agree with you in a sense that Jelly's over singing during that chorus, but for me, I feel like the way, unless I specifically shout out Jelly's approach on his vocals with like any of the other tracks coming up here in this review, I'm just gonna say that like just I think the problem I have with his vocals is it seems like he's doing a vocal good performance, but emotionally he's phoning it in, and that's what I have here, which is interesting to say because like the chorus is pretty big and powerful, but like I agree with you that the lyrics are pretty generic, with him starting the chorus being like, I'm wide awake and I'm dreaming. And then that's followed up with wondering where and when I fell apart. Which, for me, I guess this could be highlighting the human existence in a nutshell. Like, just trying to make sense of life, because it's hard being a human. But, like, everything kind of just seems a little disjointed, like especially if you're kicking off the chorus with like I'm wide awake and I'm dreaming, like that's more hopeful, but then everything kind of just falls apart. So yeah, there's that. And in terms of just anything else, like on the production front, it just seems like the chorus comes out of nowhere. Like you just get a random uplift from the production. Like it's very much designed to be a single in that aspect. In hindsight, so I mean, I guess it works in that kind of single aspect. So yeah, I guess it's why it was designed that way. And yeah, like on the lyrical front here, like I kind of alluded to, like this seems like it's centered around Jelly just trying to make his life better, but failing to see the happy ending. And like there's moments here or there that I do like, especially like in the chorus where you get the lyrics, "Angels only meet you where you are, and I'm in the dark." And like, no, that's a good line. Just like I'm feeling very indifferent about Heart of Stone, because like again, it's going into that single country pop territory, and like for me, like I don't know, like. You're going for that big chorus. You're going for like the lyrical alley of like, oh hey, my life is falling apart. But like for me, like there's little moments here or there, like things start to peak up, but there's not enough meat on the bone to keep me interested. Now I will say, like again, this track did not end up in a bottom track kind of territory for me. Like again, I would put it in the average track bucket here, which is a new track bucket that I've just come up with in our show here. So
I like that. I like the album track bucket. Now this for me would probably go in the good song bucket. I will agree with you though that there is a calculated nature to a song like this. Like I said, it's designed to be a single, but the problem is this, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit before. Because we've done, very deep, soulful albums like Joni Mitchell's Blue, and we've done very deliberate pop albums like Wham's Make It Big. And there is a pretty defined line between, coming off as sincere while also going for the big sound. Personally, I think, some of the more recent pop stuff like Sabrina Carpenter and Chaperone have managed to find that territory pretty good. This one, though, it tries so hard to find the middle ground that it kind of doesn't go anywhere except the middle ground. So there is a risk to trying to blend the synthetic nature of pop and the rootsiness of folk together like this. But that aside, I do like the song, but I am good if we move on to the next track, also a single, entitled I Am Not Okay.
Not to be confused with the My Chemical Romance song, I'm Not Okay, I promise. So, oh man, I want to... Okay, I'm just going to throw this out there. I would really like to hear Jelly Roll cover I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance. Let's make it happen, man. Let's make a petition.
Let's do it.
On it. Let's bring some hope into this world. So, in terms of I'm Not Okay, I'm just going to come out right of the gate and say it. Like, this was a really, really good song for me. The production's pretty solid. I like the overall instrumentation and like how it doesn't go for that big kind of like synthetic kind of feel, like that Jack Antonoff feel. Like it's a very focused kind of approach. Like the chorus kind of does bleed into that generic pop country territory, but it comes across pretty well in my ears. And like Jelly's delivery here, I like it from the emotional aspect. It's hitting all the punches for me, but the rhythm level, it kind of is a little bit boring. It's on the basic level, which I mean, considering that prior to this, I've had nothing but on the vocal aspect, nothing but nice things to say. But my main beef is he wasn't connecting on the emotional level. I'll take connecting on the emotional level with a song like this any day of the year. In terms of the lyrical aspect, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is another, depressing song, but it's just focusing on just not being okay, but finding hope in the fact that everything's gonna be okay. Just basically having the mindset, at the end of the day, everything's gonna be all right. I did like that mindset. And even that issue that I have with Jelly's delivery in the song, specifically in the second verse, it just seems like it was a slow two-step. This was a pretty good song, and especially in that second verse specifically, I'm just gonna highlight this. The very depressing start to it, where he's saying I woke up today, I almost stayed in bed, had the devil on my back and voices in my head. That's depression, severe depression in a nutshell. And I got nothing else to say other than this is the best song on the record so far for me, in that we've landed in one of my favorite tracks off the album. This is my third favorite track.
Funny enough, I'm right there with you in ranking. This is my third favorite song on the album as well, and for a lot of the reasons you talked about. It does feel a lot more stripped down and confessional compared to the myriad of stomp clapping we've had so far. There's really not a whole lot of stomp or clap. It's basically just acoustic guitar, and a little bit of production thingamabob in the back, but ultimately you just have guitar and Jelly Roll. And Jelly Roll, I think, does sing very well on this track. He does slightly get to the overreaching territory, but doesn't come off as bad as really when he gets that high register when he starts the chorus, when he's talking about holding on for dear life. I'm glad you talked about that opening to the second verse, because I thought that was a real standout set of lines from the whole album. And you pretty much nailed it. This just sounds a lot more genuine. I would say this is a much better example of genuineness meets pop product than Heart of Stone was. This is a single that feels more genuine, feels more reaching out, doesn't really hold back at all. Like, it feels very sincere, but it sounds very good. So yeah, I Am Not Okay, my third favorite song on this album as well.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say to close up the discussion about I'm Not Okay. This is very much going to go into the category of songs that we've often talked about in our show here, where an artist has the ability to produce art and exercise demons in such a way that a listener can latch onto that exorcism of that artist's demons in terms of a musical form and exercise their own demons. It's a communal exorcism. I love that. Anytime I brought up that idea that of art and music being able to be therapeutic to the listener and the artist, anytime I mention that, it's always been a positive response from my end here. But yeah, without any further ado, are you ready to find out what happens when the drugs just don't work anymore?
Well, when the drugs don't work, there's really only one question: who's going to take you home? And pretty much all you need to know about this track on a lyrical front is right there in those lines. When the drugs don't work, who's going to take you home? Because that's basically what this song's about, Jelly's basically admitting, hey, there have been times in my life where I've gotten high, gotten drunk, and partied it up, and at some point it all wears off, so when you spend all your money and spend all your time doing drugs and you have nothing left and no resources, who do you turn to? What do you do? So lyrically, it's solid. I did like that little twist to, the title itself of, when the drugs don't work, who's going to take you home. I also thought that, and I apologize in advance because I'm probably going to butcher this, llsey Huber or llsey Juber. She is the female singer on this track. I thought she did a pretty good job in her role of being the counter to the confused and very ambient protagonist that is Jelly Roll in this track. And I think Jelly Roll does okay. I wasn't necessarily blown away by his performance. I thought this was a very album track, in a sense. So yeah, I would say this is probably towards the upper part of the middle, but definitely in the middle of tracks, because unlike the first few tracks, there's really no percussion or no real stomp clap, but it's also not very country or folksy either. This also almost feels like a very dreamy, or more appropriately nightmare-y pop track, very floaty but dark. So yeah, it's solid. I didn't hate it, but it's definitely not a top track for me either.
All right, so this is gonna be awkward here. Let me get a drink of water.
Oh boy, I believe we're either entering into Ryan really loves a song mode or Ryan really hates a song mode.
I'll just discuss my feelings about the track here. Yeah, I'm gonna start from the lyrical context within this song. I thought the overall way that some of the lyrics were structured, I want to highlight something in the chorus. I thought it was a decent message and a decent what they were trying to get across. And the section I want to highlight is when the high's too high and the low's too low. You want someone, but you want to be alone. The contrast there, it's really trying to get across the escapism that you're trying to get. But it doesn't really land anymore. And you really just start to hit rock bottom. I thought that was pretty effective, and just a whole notion about drugs not working, or that next high, even if it's not a physical drug, but just trying to substitute dealing with life with trying to just get stuff accomplished, whether that's being through a couple different means. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. That was really solid. I do like that. So the song really did have really good potential. But the way that one of the one of the first issues I want to talk about here with this song here specifically is just the inclusion of that female guest vocalist here. I feel like the two vocalists don't mix well together, and like whenever she comes in, it almost halts all momentum that the song could have had. Quite honestly, it seems like it never picks up. It seems like it's a not a natural transition, and like it just seems like like it's not connecting, and it's just like I'm hearing like bits and parts of different songs here trying to be glued together by like ineffective duct tape here, and just the the female guest vocalist here, llsey. I'm gonna try again. If we're mispronouncing that, don't add us. We're just two humble white guys in America here, but yeah, just like it comes across as very, very generic. Like what? Like I'm not even sure of this girl's race, but like it just comes across as very generic white girl in a pop feature sense. Like it's just like it almost comes out like movie trailer. Like white girl singing. Like it's just very unoriginal, uninspired, and it kind of makes me irritated. I had to listen to this. And even outside of the guest vocalist there, because I'm gonna pivot away from that, the production beats like they're a drag, and it just at some points it seemed a bit too stale, and it's just like especially you get that in the second verse where you get Jelly singing like I know hopeless, I know broken, and like it almost seems like whoever the producer was just like, well, this seems like a pretty straightforward section. Let me just put in like a finger snap beat that some high schooler would have used in a SoundCloud track back in the early 2000s and basically run it through there. But yeah, and even on the lyrical content in that second verse that I highlighted, the I know hopeless, I know broken, I know doors that keep on closing. That's pretty basic and uninspired. I know what he was trying to go for, but that's basically like me being like, when I wake up, I drink coffee, then I drink some water, then I get ready for work, then I get in my car. Like, come on. Like, you're not actually, like, providing a whole lot of, like, lyrical depth here. In a song like this, you could have really approached it from a couple different angles. But, yeah, like, that I'm kind of insulted by. And the other thing that I want to highlight is the whole concept of like, when the drugs don't work, who's gonna drive you home? In the post-chorus in this track here, Jelly's like basically saying, "I will, I will, I will." Like, is he talking to another person? Like, hey, I'm gonna drive this person home, or I'm gonna drive my own self home. But if you're on drugs and you're gonna drive yourself home, like that's not okay. But like maybe home is just like trying to get to a safe place. I don't know. It's not very clear here, man. Yeah, this song's a mess in my opinion. And do I need to specifically say it?
I don't think so. I think you've pretty much addressed the core arguments that tell me that this is your least favorite song on the album, and if this is somehow not your least favorite song on the album, I am very scared of what's to come when we do get there.
You are correct, man. This is my least favorite song off the whole album, and like, yeah, I don't want to listen to the song ever again, man. So
yeah, that I respect your opinion there. To me, this is very much a track that I could take it or leave it. Like, to me, it's too generic to hate, in a sense, which I guess makes it even more loathsome in some contexts. But if I'm listening to this album front to back, I hear this track, I'm thinking, okay, I'm not I don't feel like hitting the skip button, but I'm not turn the volume up either. It's an album track, but I will say it is very much a standout track as far as him trying to quote unquote go pop or have a pop sound. And I agree with you, it doesn't really work that well, but it also didn't offend me super much, at least not compared to a couple of the other songs we have coming down the pike.
Yeah, and for me, like, I'm curious to see what like your least favorite track is, man. Because I thought this track was gonna be like at least in a bottom track territory, but I misfired on that one. But yeah, pivoting on over to Higher Than Heaven, which is the next track off the album. And hi, Wiz Khalifa. It's nice to have you in a track here. I guess for a very brief guest verse, which basically the only reason why he's on this verse is basically like, oh hey, this song's called Higher Than Heaven. Well, you know what Wiz Khalifa does in his spare time when he's not whizzing a Khalifa, like, oh my goodness, and that whole his guest verse here, dude, like. I'm a little bit insulted by it in that it's not adding any context, and it just seems way too brief, and it just doesn't just flow. It doesn't compliment Jelly in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, what a way to start off the discussion of Higher Than Heaven. So yeah, in terms of other things about the track here, the nicest thing I can say about this track is just the overall melody is solid, especially in the chorus. It's very pleasant to the ears, and it lands pretty nice. And that's pretty much it. The chorus kind of wears out its welcome after a while. And this is where I'm not trying to hold this album to the standard of following a narrative, because this song is about him just getting high and it's my way out of the darkness, smoke in my lungs, I can breathe. Okay, but earlier in the album you were being I'm so broken, and again, this might be just showing the pitfalls of being a human being, where you can wake up one day and feeling you can really tackle the world, and the next day you just can't get out of bed. That's maybe why I'm not holding this track to that standard. But yeah, basically after that first verse, you only get that chorus that Jelly's riding on to High Heaven, and it's not a strong enough chorus for him to ride home on, and it could have this track could have benefited from Wiz maybe putting a little bit more effort into his guest verse. And again, I'm not the biggest Wiz Khalifa head, so if this is his home base in terms of lyrical writing, okay, cool, fine, whatever. But in terms of anything else, Jelly could have benefited from adding just at least one more verse here instead of just riding the chorus to the cows come home. So yeah, unfortunately, we go from my least favorite track on the album to my third least favorite with Higher Than Heaven.
I get where you're coming from, and I understand where you are going. To me, though, my feelings on Higher Than Heaven are pretty much the same as When the Drugs Don't Work. I wasn't offended enough by it. In fact, I think I probably like this a little bit better than When the Drugs Don't Work. First of all, I do like the sweep and ease of this track. This feels like the first true country song on the album. Some of the other ones, like Heart of Stone and I'm Not Okay, or even Winning Streak, definitely go into more the folk, gospel, stomp clap genre. Here, this feels like a bit more of a country feel to it, but that may just be the 6/8 time talking to me. Aside from that, though, I don't really have any standout things to say about Jelly Roll's performance. I think he does all right with the melody, and it is a good melody. I do agree with you that Wiz verse is very short and doesn't need to be there, and almost feels like it exists purely so Wiz Khalifa could say he collabed on a country song, which is pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. It's a very cynical joke, but a joke nonetheless. And okay, fine. But once again, I think all you need to know about this track, particularly the fact that it's with Khalifa, is right there in the title, Higher Than Heaven. You know, he gets higher than heaven because sometimes he hurts like hell. And that's it. Roll credits. I don't think there's a whole lot of depth to this track. I think this is very much an album track again. This and When the Drugs Don't Work go pretty firmly into the album track bucket for me as far as this, because I really don't have a whole lot to say about this that you haven't already covered in your dissertation. But I did like it a little more than you did.
Again, like, not to be in a dead horse with a dead horse at this rate, but I'm very curious to see what your bottom track is, and like your bottom tracks in general. So
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that expression, beating a dead horse with a dead horse. Just the visual of that is beautiful. I just want to let you know that.
You're welcome, man. All right, so are you ready to close off side A with the next track here, which is Liar?
Yes, Liar. And we get back into country single territory, and this one has been played a little bit over the last couple years. Like, I know I mentioned Tom the Shadows earlier. He briefly played a clip of it in his worst list. It wasn't on his worst list, but he played a clip of this song during the his discussion of songs on the worst list. And I've heard this song at work many, many times as well. And I think it's a pretty solid song. I think that production-wise, and also Jelly Roll's vocals, particularly, especially in the chorus, this is probably as good as Winning Streak, because I think whenever he does sing, you could feel a little bit more passion than you do on the previous couple tracks that we talked about. On the other side of it, though, much like we talked about with Heart of Stone, there is a bit of a calculatedness to us and a very much a sheen that sort of sands down the rough edges to the point where this song really isn't about much more than, surprise, surprise, what's in the title? It's a song about dealing with a liar. Someone who has cheated on you, backstabbed you, told you to your face that things were going to be one way and turns out they were something different. And while I did appreciate the rhyming of liar with fire a bit more than I did on burning, it does come off a little generic too, because again, this feels designed to be a single and designed to very much hit that sweet spot. There's a lot of tracks on here where it feels like it's being created not from the heart, but from the brain, or more cynically, if you want to say, from the wallet. Like, you want to get this on radio, you want to get this on the charts, and you want to make a couple $1,000,000 off it. And again, in the game of pop, in the game of radio, in the game of making music, I don't have anything against that. But a lot of times you sacrifice one to get the other, and it feels like there's a little bit of that there. That being said, I probably would put this in the top half of my tracks on the album, probably in the same range as Heart of Stone. An enjoyable song to listen to, but not necessarily one that elevates itself up to be in my top 3.
I think, like, my main problem with this track here lies within, like, the concept that you mentioned about, like, how this almost seems like it's, like, maybe geared to being on the radio. And, like, I feel like that might be, like, some of the issues that I have with some of the production elements, like, with this track here and, like, a couple of the other tracks off the album. And that's not to say that I can't enjoy, a gas station hot dog, which is an interesting concept considering I'm a pescatarian, but, figuratively, where we live in the universe where I'm not a pescatarian, I can enjoy, like, a gas station hot dog, or I can enjoy an app sampler from, Gecko or Sheets. So, I can enjoy that. But, here, I think my biggest problem with Liar here specifically, you kind of hinted at it a little bit. The, talking about, liar and fire, those elements there, it kind of bled into the track Burning for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so we're basically kind of taking elements of this here, and we're making choruses that kind of sound like a couple of the other choruses smashed together. And for me, that was pretty uninspired. I know what they were trying to go for in terms of like getting those on the radio. So yeah, like I wasn't a huge fan of that. But I will say what really kept this track here out of being a bottom track for me was one, well, Higher Than Heaven. Like, I thought that was a far weaker track, and obviously my second least favorite track. When we get to it, I'll explain my reasons why, and like, you know, I'm not even going to talk about my least favorite anymore. So yeah, just the positives here is I do like the guitar driven verses on the production front. Like, that was pretty cool. And also, I was actually a fan of what this song was trying to go for lyrically. Like you mentioned, like yeah, the song's about, like, you know, dealing with a liar. Like, I actually drilled it down to the sense, like, this was like Jelly dealing with the devil himself, and the devil trying to fill him with illusions of being filled with, like, you know, negative thoughts. Like, I thought that was a really cool idea. But yeah, I almost feel like maybe the chorus leaned on that a bit too much for my liking, but it was still a refreshing concept in itself. Like, you know, he could have leaned into, like, you know, the generic, like, you know, oh, hey, liar, you're a liar in a relationship, but like the fact that it seems like he was actually trying to address the devil himself. Like, I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, unfortunately, Liar overall, like, if I had to rank it, it's a below average track for me, but it did enough to keep it out of a bottom 3 territory, to be honest.
So it probably falls in your album track bucket, I would say.
Yeah, pretty much. Like if I had to pick tracks out of here to throw in an album track bucket, yeah, that would very much fit the moniker.
Yeah. Personally, I would probably put in the good song bucket. It's because, again, I like a good catchy pop song, and this falls in that category, but it does have a lot of genericism to it that I'm not a huge fan of. But yeah, I think that wraps up side A. And before we get to side B of Beautifully Broken by One Jelly Roll, Ryan, I got a question for you.
Is that question, how does a jelly roll?
You sir are not on a winning streak. With that one. Wow. Whew. Okay. Cool. No, that is not the question I was going to ask. The question I was going to ask, if I could get it out of my system after being blindsided like that, is if our listeners are enjoying what they are hearing, all jokes aside, and they want to keep supporting us in what we do, which is, you know, talking about music each and every week, how can they go about doing that?
So, the main crux on how they can help support us at this stage in our show's history is just to make sure that we get picked up by the algorithmic gods out there. And the ways that they can help appease said gods are by, like, you know, just making sure that they, whatever podcasting platform of choice that they're currently listening to us on right now, make sure that they do whatever action is necessary to stay up to date with our episodes, whether that's a subscribe, a follow, and in addition to that, if the said platform does allow for a rating on, like, you know, the said platform, make sure you leave a positive rating. That goes a long way as well. And if you're listening to this on the YouTubes, make sure that you interact with the video that this is playing from by liking the video, and, like, you know, throw in a comment down below what you think about this review so far, and what do you think about the album in general. Be interested to hear other people's thoughts and feelings about it. And in addition to that, like, other you know, gods that they can help, you know, appease to help our show grow are the social media gods. And the platforms that we're currently on right now are Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And the handle for that is ttheylisten. We post, like, you know, Obviously when our new episodes upload, and we also do like, oh hey, 1 year ago today we did this episode, and like there was a special event with a specific album. I know like Jimmy Eat World recently celebrated an anniversary for their album Bleed American, which we did a review on. Like we post random clips of reviews, and we do different stuff on our social medias. And in terms of anything else that can help support us, I mean that pretty wraps up everything in a nutshell. I mean, just make sure that you, if this is your first time listening to us, scroll through our back catalog and see what other albums that we've covered and expand your musical taste, or hear our takes on albums that you know and love. And if we somehow haven't covered any other album or artist that you're familiar with and you want to challenge us, which one, okay, cool. I think at this point we've covered the gamut pretty well in terms of musical acts. But if you want to reach out to us and do a listener request, we have an email that would be ttheylisten@gmail.com. Yeah, I'd be happy to tackle anything that the listeners will throw our way. And yeah, from the bottom of my heart, it's been a blast doing these episodes, diving into different musical acts week in, week out. And yeah, I have one hell of an excellent co-host to do that with, Matt.
I appreciate that, man. And from the bottom of my heart to our listeners, thank you again for helping us and my awesome co-host do what we do on a weekly basis. We appreciate your listenership, and as Ryan sort of hinted at, we accept mostly all challenges. I mean, sometimes if it gets a little too crazy, we may have to step back and be like, oh, okay, maybe not. But I think we could be challenged up for pretty much anything. On that note, speaking of challenges in our way, are you ready to move on to the second half of this album with Everyone Bleeds?
So, kicking off side B here of the record here, Beautifully Broken by Jelly Roll, is the song Everyone Bleeds. And, I mean, for me, this track here, it very much kind of can go into the whole album track territory, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's very much a generic kind of track. I mean, this is the other track here that includes the finger snap beats in the production, which, gotta be honest with you, it kind of irritates me because it's very lazy, and it's just it's almost like that trope of very vibey music that it's good if you're not paying attention to it, to still a saying from you. And I feel that holds back the track a good bit, because I do like the chorus, and especially the section where you get the Ryan Kearns musical kink of the call and response section. I thought that was pretty solid, and I have no issues with Jelly's performance here. Overall, it's pretty solid, and in terms of the lyrical themes, I do like how this track is centered around the idea of everyone goes through different things that affect them. We're all there's not one person out there who's living blissfully ignorant out there, unless they're an extreme narcissist. But the majority of everyone has their own share of problems, for better for worse. So yeah, there's some good, some bad here. But yeah, just overall, Everyone Bleeds. I would maybe put it in the same kind of territory as Winning Streak and even Burning, to be honest with you. Tracks that are pretty average. Some good parts, some bad parts, but overall a mixed bag.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. In fact, I didn't realize this until I downloaded it and sent it to my email. I forgot to write notes about this track, and realistically, I really don't need to, in hindsight, because 3 listens through it, and I'm pretty much right there with you. It sounds almost exactly like Burning. Has the generic lyrics, has the sort of very stomp clap vibes that we've been hearing throughout this album. And as I've said time and time again, pretty much everything you need to know about this song is right there in the title. Everyone bleeds. It doesn't matter if you're making $1 million or little. We all bleed, just like Jelly Roll. Which I didn't think was necessarily the greatest way to finish off that chorus, because everyone bleeds just like me. It's me, I am Jelly Roll, me. This is about me. It's just like, but on the other hand, I didn't hate it quite enough to put it as a bottom track. Like, this is very generic. This probably could have swapped places with Burning on any given day, but at least I kind of know Everyone Bleeds and sort of can at least remember it to the point where it's like, okay, this is that album track. It's not quite as offensive or boring or offensively boring. It is what it is. It's very much an album track for me, and that's that.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I think we've covered all that Everyone Bleeds. Like, too much... It's too tea. So, are you ready to, talk about, like, how you get by?
Yes, I'm ready to talk about how I get by. And apparently Jelly Roll decided, hey, this whole thing was stomping and clapping and over-singing in certain places and just trying to, put some lyrics down and get this rootsy feel. Why don't I double down on everything on this track? And here we get a very stomp clap. This is almost basically designed to be, like, it's not even designed to be a true roots gospel sound. It's the kind of roots gospel sound you would hear in a, like, Hallmark movie. Like, it is, like, calculated to be so rootsy and so deep. It just does, it comes off very fake to me. The lyrics to me are as generic, if not more generic than anything else I've heard on this album so far, including Everyone Bleeds, including Burning. And I think his singing performance is probably the worst on this entire record. He is over singing in the upper register the entire time. And even when he dips it back down a little bit, it gets sort of buried by this, again, stop clap production that is just very calculated to an nth degree. And to me, what really set this track apart in the worst way possible, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. But there is this, like, cricket noise or woodsy type of atmospheric noise in the background of the entire track. It's like a tambourine, except without the jingling. It's just sort of like the throughout the entire track. And every time I've heard it, it has driven me up a wall. It's like, I cannot listen to this. And I think maybe they were trying to get it to be like another part of this woodsy, rootsy type of thing. It's like, hey, let's pretend we're out in the woods. Let's pretend we're in the middle of an abandoned church on a Sunday morning, talking about how we get by. And again, not to knock, the narrative or overall arching theme of this album. I do appreciate that there is lyrics about, going to bed, looking like crap and going to church, as you are and just being accepted as you are. I do like that sentiment, but the execution here just drove me up a wall. I don't think I have to say it, but I'm going to anyway. This is my least favorite track off of Beautifully Broken.
All right. With that being said, I got to take a drink of water.
We're about to fight, aren't we? We are about to enter fight territory. It is fight o'clock on Hey, Listen to This.
How do you know that, man? Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I could be, like, pulling the rug from underneath you and, like, giving you a fake out here, but... Yeah, man. I'm very much in a disagreement with you, but I think we'll maybe agree to disagree here. Like, my first response to this song here, like my first note, is holy shit, this song took me by surprise. Like, for me, you mentioned, like, how this song seems like it's taking a lot of, like, the random, like, elements that Jelly's been using throughout this whole, like, album so far and taking it up to 11. I feel like it does, like, for me, like, this song does do that, but it takes all the good things that's happened in this album so far and take it up to 11 for me. I I really didn't have any issues with Jelly's performance overall. Like, I thought it was pretty solid. Nothing that was really, like, overselling it to me. Yeah, and, like, a couple of things that you mentioned so far about Jelly singing as a whole throughout this record. You've identified, like, parts where it seems like he's over singing. And for me, like, I maybe need to dig back into the record to really find those parts, or maybe even specifically this song here, and just really try to drill down on those sections that you were trying to highlight there, because I didn't really hear that. But for me here, like, what sold me on this song here is just the overall structure of it. Like, the production here is doing the Lord's work and bringing life to the song. Like, everything, like, kicks off with that, like, very much, like, for lack of a better descriptor, like, rolling into deep momentum where, like, you get that, like, that strumming, like, and, like, Jelly, laying down lyrics, like, they begin the whole track with, I light every bridge, yeah, just to watch it burn. Like, I thought that was a really good start there. And, like, how the chorus kicks off, like, it's really, really good. I really thought the gospel choir inclusion in the chorus was pretty cool. I did like that quite a bit. And another kind of switch here that I did like in this song that did set it apart from like the rest of the track list, to be honest with you, is how they focused on the bass in the second verse. Like, they swapped out the guitar for the bass and made that the primary foundation. I thought that was very cool. I thought that was an excellent execution there on the songwriting front. And you alluded to, like, on the lyrical front, like, Jelly's talking about ways that he's getting by. Like, you mentioned about, like, going to church the way that you woke up and being accepted for that. But I do like how Jelly's identifying different ways that he's getting by, whether that's just, like, partaking in adult substances, or, like, going to church and just being who you are. Like, I thought that was a pretty cool notion. And yeah, just the overall, like, package of the song, for me, Get By would be, like, the song that I would show people if they were asking me, hey, Ryan, how does a Jelly roll? And I'm like, this, dear listener, dear friend, is how a Jelly does indeed roll. So yeah, Get By is my favorite track off the whole album.
Oh boy, wow! This is the first time in a while we've disagreed like this. I think I'm trying to think of any other times that we've had a contrast between least favorite and favorite like this. The only other ones I could think of were probably the Gang of Youths episode and maybe the first Bon Iver episode, because I wasn't as much of a fan of award season as you were, and I forget what track it was off of Angel in Real Time that we were just like, yeah, I like this, but I understand why you don't.
I think it might have been the man himself, to be honest with you.
I think you're right. I think that is the track.
But yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine that we disagree to this amount of level, because, like, it shows that we're coming from two different standpoints in terms of enjoying music. And yeah, I mean, I think that's important that we both express our opinions appropriately, instead of being like, well, I'm gonna hold back a little bit. Like, it's totally fine, man. So I'm cool with it.
I'm cool with it too. And again, there are elements, like you said, particularly the lyrical part of it, that I did find some appreciation with. But I just, again, for me, I couldn't get over the sameness of the stomp clap 2 songs in a row. I thought he was over singing, and again, that little cricket noise was the cherry on top or bottom in this case that sunk this track for me.
So, Get By was your least favorite. Burning was your second least favorite, if I'm not mistaken?
Burning was my third least favorite, so the only 2 tracks I have left to reveal are my favorite and my second least.
Okay, and I think we might be in agreement with our second least, but I might be misfiring again here. And for me, like, I like to mirror each other. I've yet to reveal my second favorite and my second least favorite. So yeah, there we go, man.
There we go.
All things are equal, but in the meantime, I'm gonna pivot on over to the next track here, which is "Unpretty," and so "Unpretty" here, coming off of the highs of "Get By" with "Unpretty." It's very much in the same vein of I'm Not Okay in terms of like toning everything down, looking more introspective. And I love the execution here. The use of the instrumentations are really cool. It's almost like a Rhodes kind of keyboard kind of effect going on here. I'm not sure what the exact instrument that is playing accompanying Jelly here throughout this track, but it's a really nice touch, and just the just how everything seems so sincere and how everything's so stripped back and the lyrical content matches that to a T. Like I thought that was really cool. The switch up to the guitar in the second verse was actually pretty good too. Doesn't really just get too. Like the course, the song itself never gets really too big. And what the lyrical nature about the song basically addressing about like hey, like there's parts of yourself that got you to where you were. Yeah, they're unpretty, but you just got to acknowledge that was a part of you, and that's your past. And I thought that was a really good it's almost like a sobering kind of thought. So I thought that was pretty cool. And like this is another song here that Jelly's connecting on the emotional front and also on the vocal technical aspect. I really had no issues with this performance in a nutshell. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Like I felt like going from the highs of Get By to this song here, I was really starting to think that the record was going to finish pretty strong because, Unpretty is my second favorite song off the whole album.
And for me, Unpretty is, as you say, a return to the same level of soul searching that he did on I Am Not Okay and Winning Streak. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that the execution on here is magnificent. Just, first of all, the way this track starts with that very simple, like, church organ, just maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a sucker for confessional songs with church organ. But that one, like this, just like it did with, I forget what track it was off of Blonde, but that track, which was my favorite, this track did the same thing. And the way he talks about some of the lines that really stood out to me on this track were him saying, how can 12 steps seem so far, and my personal favorite, which is I am not who I am without my sins. And just being that upfront about this type of discussion, saying, listen, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect. My backstory shows that I am very much far from perfect, and who I am, is still a part of me. I may not want it that way, but it's inevitable. It's unavoidable. And to me, that level of nuance in that kind of songwriting, mixed with the strong performance vocally, he's very laid back, he's very deep, he's very authentic here. I'm right there with you on this song, and I got one spot higher than you. I have this as my favorite song off the whole record.
And I can totally respect that, man. And I'm glad that, we've had some disagreements with this record so far, actually, for a good portion of it, to be honest with you. But, it's nice, that we can unanimously, basically acknowledge the fact that this is a great song. It's kind of a shame because I don't think that you would know better than me if this would be a single or not. But I feel like the world needs more songs like this on the radio as compared to other stuff. But and also to finish a thought that you left lingering there. I feel like the Frank Ocean song that you were talking about that was like, that executed that church organ that you really liked in that album was Godspeed. Like, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yes, you are correct about that.
So, yeah, that being said, are you ready to pivot on over to the next track off the record, which is Grace?
Yes, Grace, which is the next track. And here we get a bit more of a shift back towards the middle, back towards Burning and Everyone Bleeds territory. Although I did think this song was a little bit better than both of those. You do get a little bit of over singing on the choruses, a little bit, but not to the point where it really did anything for me one way or the other. It didn't offend me, but it also didn't lift my spirits. And again, much like with a lot of... See, the biggest problem with this album for me, in a sense, is that for some of its highs, like the depth of I Am Not Okay, the depth of Unpretty, the depth of Winning Streak, you get a lot of songs like this where if you've kind of picked up on the theme of this album, a very religious, somebody save me type of vibe, you can kind of look at the title of the track and know about at least 50% what you're in for, if not 100%. And that's kind of what you get here, He's looking for grace. Needs to find some grace. That's it. Roll credits. And again, it's not a bad song by any means. It's not one that offends me, but it's also not a great song either. This, again, lands firmly in the album track bucket that I am slightly swiping from you from about an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, for me, I think it's interesting because I feel like for me, like the album track bucket for me is like I think you might be higher on those tracks than me, but Grace here goes like I would put it like a hair higher than Winning Streak, Burning, and those kind of tracks, like the average tracks that I've labeled. Like for me, like going from the highs of the two previous tracks for me, and I was thinking like, oh man, yeah, here we go. The album's gonna finish pretty strong. And to go to like a shift down that you mentioned with this track here, kind of made me a little scared, to be honest with you. But we'll get into the rest of the tracks here momentarily. But with this track here, it's a pretty straightforward track in its songwriting. Like you mentioned, the production's fine. For me, it was more of a traditional country setup here, and I like the background vocals, adding a layer during the chorus. Like I thought that was pretty nice, and the whole concept about finding grace is echoed here, especially with the line like, "When my devil meets your demons, we can find a little grace." And again, we're finding Jelly, utilizing the self-acceptance lyrical motif here, and blending that with a hint of sobering up in terms of just hey, this is the reality of where we are at. We are two people in a dark portion of our life, and hopefully we can allow each other to just enjoy life and just experience grace with one another. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, in terms of an overall song package here, it's an above that average track for me. Nothing too much I can nitpick about it, other than some of the stuff does come across pretty bland and pretty basic, but it has some good elements.
It does. It's definitely a track that, if you're listening to this album front to back, you're not gonna get too offended by it. And if you're, again, it's weird because we've talked about how a lot of tracks reach for an audience, but I feel like anyone who's into religious music or CCM, if you will, probably would like this album. I say probably. It may depend on their tolerance for language and dealing with some relatively rough subject matter. And I say relatively because you and I, we both went to a college where CCM was big, and I'm trying to imagine what percentage of people we went to school with in college would appreciate this album for its religious discussions or its sort of spiritual process, and who would shy away for mentioning the devil so much and mentioning drugs and using the F-bomb on the opening track. Ooh, so I don't know. But it feels like that would be sort of the core audience for this track, but also country, also gospel. I have no idea. It's Jelly Roll, I think. He's going to become his own genre of music soon enough. But all that being said, are you ready to pivot on over to What It Takes?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I hate to say it, like with What It Takes, we've fully landed back into like the like for what I would like to call like a home base kind of territory in terms of like music here with this track. Like I will say lyrically the song is pretty good. Like it did take me a second to get the meaning of like the title of the track. Like traditionally, like when you think of like the phrase "what it takes," like it's like what it takes to be a man, what it takes to turn a car, what it takes to make a cup of coffee, like that kind of like that kind of notion. But like, oh no, there's like a twist on this, like what it takes from you, and what it is like abusing drugs, abusing alcohol. So yeah, like the whole like notion about that was pretty cool. But what I found lacking in this track here is like the production here goes back into home base mode with like the standard pop country stuff, like and it almost seems like it sucks the life out of the song because like he could have went into a different direction. And it's interesting that like I have critiques about this song here, but like I did like get by a whole lot. And look at these other songs here where he's really embracing like a dark element to it that just makes this song seems like a little bit out of place. Like this song almost feels like a party song, but thanks to a party, it's a meh party, to be honest with you. Like it's a party that no one really wants to go to. And also I found it funny that genius.com marks that there was a guitar solo in the track, but it's not an impactful solo, and I actually had to specifically listen for it on multiple listens coming back to the track. Yeah, it really it's almost like the Wiz Khalifa of guitar solos in terms of guest verses within this album here. Like it doesn't add much, it doesn't take anything away, it's just there. So yeah, for me, What It Takes is pretty much an average track. Like you get some good elements to it, but like some other elements that really hold back the track.
The Wiz Khalifa of guitar solos. I like that. I like that wordplay that you did there. And speaking of wordplay, I agree with you that it is nice to hear the twist of what it takes used in this context of instead of being like you got what it takes or what does it take to win your love. It's like no, what something like drugs or alcohol takes from you. This is what it takes from you whenever you do these things. Whenever you try to be a man, whenever you try to be the biggest badass on the street. But aside from that, I also agree with you that this album, not gonna go full spoiler here, but this track in particular does come off quite generic because it does for me fall in the same stomp clap territory. There's another song out on the radio right now called Backup Plan by Luke Combs, Bailey Zimmerman. I like that song, but this song very much falls that same category of like boom clap, like very sort of We Will Rock You but with a twang. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, there's nothing about it that makes it stand out, especially compared to some of the other stomp clap tracks we've already had on this. Like, if it's between this and Liar, I'm taking Liar probably 9 times out of 10, maybe 8. But point being, this is very much, I would say, probably more towards the upper part of the middle for me. Like, So maybe like a 6 or a 7, maybe an 8, depending on the day. But yeah, What It Takes, it's all right.
Yeah. And also, I gotta get this slide out of here before we pivot on over to Hey Mama. Like the whole section where you were just talking about like stomp, clap. Like I was thinking, oh man, Charlie XCX must be like just shaking her head at that notion because she came out with that song, boom, clap. So, I mean, yeah, that might be a little bit of a stretch there, but yeah. Yeah, I got nothing else to say. So, you want to kick it over to Hey Mama?
Yes, Hey Mama, not to be confused with the song by the Black Eyed Peas. So Hey Mama, the penultimate track off of Beautifully Broken. More or less, this is a country track through and through. Like, he talks about certain cities, like he names drop cities like Kennesaw and Lubbock, and stuff like that. And it's an alright track about, how he's, out on the road, but, at the end of the day, he's still, mama's boy. He still reaches out to his mom and wants to check in with her. He's still a part of the family and still loves his parents. And the sentiments are very nice. And I do like how the track starts off with the phone call to either his mom or someone who plays his mom. I'm not 100% sure either way. So I thought that was a nice little touch. The one part of this track, though, that really kind of... It didn't irritate me. This is not my second least favorite track, so spoilers, we know what is. Is the fact that this track also has a record crackle behind it. Like, it feels like someone, like, dropped the needle on the vinyl and you just hear that... And I'm just thinking, okay, I get the phone part. Why the record? Like, it doesn't really add anything. It's not a vintage track like Cyndi Lauper did, or who was it? Panic at the Disco did. Like, this isn't that. This is just, adding that for the sake of, again, that sort of faux rootsiness. I didn't hate it, but after the third listen, I was like, wait, why did they do that? What did that add? That added absolutely nothing. But yeah, aside from that, this song's all right. It's, again, another track that lands firmly in the middle for me. It's fine.
So yeah, I really didn't have any issues with the record like scratch, the crackle that you mentioned. I thought that was a decent element. And like the phone conversation that you mentioned, it was pretty good for me too. Like I did like that. Some more positives about this track here is this is one of Jelly's better performances in terms of a vocal delivery, because like it's a very sincere delivery. Like you can really believe the message that he's trying to get across the table, and just the overall like song package in its own right. It's very much a pop country track, but like it works, like it lands well in terms of like what it's trying to do to the listener in terms of like at least on a sonic experience. So I did like that. I mean, it's a pretty basic song, but it lands pretty well. But here is like where I get just a little confused about this song, and hear me out. I might be reading into this, and you can let me know if I am or not. Who is Jelly Roll Jason addressing in the song? Is it his mom or a lover? And hear me out, okay? Like the two sections that I want to highlight are like, okay, so here's the section where he could be addressing his mom. The section where he's like, one day these winds will blow me back in your direction. Hey mama, wait for me. I'm still out here chasing dreams. One day this telephone thing won't be our one connection. So that's the mama side. That's the mama argument. Okay, here's the lover argument here that I picked up. I don't know where I'm headed next, but I wish it was my side of the bed. And hey mama, don't you know that my lonely needs you to hold? So the whole my side of the bed and my lonely needs you to hold, I'm like, I mean, no disrespect, Mr. Roll, but what is your relation with your mom? Like, is this like a mama or a mama? So, yeah, I was confused about that. I mean, it doesn't really take too much away from the song, but if this was a more sincere, straightforward song that I wasn't picking up on random undertones, I might this could probably have knocked out "I'm Not Okay" in terms of being my third favorite track. But yeah, the lyrical confusion was enough for me to sink this into just a average track territory.
So I kind of had that thought for a second myself listening to the album today. I thought this could be about a lover because it's not very specific. But I will say I think you're stretching it just a hair because for a lot of this album he's talked about struggling, like we talked about it was on I Am Not Okay, where he was talking about, being in his bed and not wanting to get out. Like, he's dealt with, like, depression and exhaustion and struggle throughout this album. So, to me, the whole thing about his side of the bed and needing comfort, like, that, to me, felt a bit more in mom territory than lover territory. Although I do understand where you're coming from. I'm not going to completely shut you out. It does seem a little confusing. But, yeah, like, it to me, that's... I'm willing to say this is more directly to his mom, and I think the tone of the song sort of implies that too. Like if this were about his lover, like the strings might be a little bit more raunchy and crunchy or whatever, but this song feels more wholesome than anything else. But that's my final thoughts on Hey Mama. Let's fall face first into the bear trap and close this thing out with Time of Day.
Featuring our Lord and Savior, Machine Gun Kelly, better known as MGK. So, for those of you who are keeping score at home, you basically have found it out. Matt did spoil this on his end, but for those of you who were paying attention, Both me and Matt shared this song as being our second least favorite song off the whole album. So, I'm gonna start with some positives because I'm generally like a half full glass kind of girly here, but yeah, the song in itself sounds good. Like I do like the themes about thinking that you don't deserve the time of day to have your prayers listened to. Like that is not a great idea, but it's a well executed idea. And there's moments here where it really does work. Jelly does do pretty good. He does do a good job in the chorus, in his specific parts. But yeah, MGK. I hate to say it, he was a mistake here in this track here. Even outside of his specific moments that I'm going to highlight, I actually looked up if he might have wrote part of this track or if he was just included in it. No, he's credited as a writer of this song. Lyrics I want to highlight are, they say the old me's not the new me, but the same me's still inside that I'm containing. Unchain me. Okay, so earlier in the album, we talked about acknowledging the unpretty parts about yourself and just acknowledging who the part is and how that helped you to who you are today and realizing that part is unpretty. But what are you trying to unchain? Are you just trying to go back to the old version of you? It's mixed messaging to a T there. And I would even say, MGK's performance on the vocal front, it's pretty flat and uninspired, and it sinks the momentum of the track by a great deal. And also, I will say, another section I'm going to highlight is the bridge. I'm usually a sucker for call and response, but here you literally get MGK saying, the cross I bear, I wear for my protection, wear for my protection. You don't get any effects of, it's somebody else singing it. Or, it sounds differently. He's just legitimately repeating the same thing without a break. And it's a bit distracting, a bit disorienting for my taste. Like this song could easily benefited from Jelly just singing the response part in the bridge. So yeah, man. I really don't have anything else to say about this track other than yeah, it's my second least favorite track off the whole album, and yeah, maybe catch me on a different day. This could beat out when the drugs don't work, but yeah, this song sucks, man.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. This is also my second least favorite track on the whole album. And part of me wonders how much of this is Jelly Roll's fault. Because first, second, and third time I've heard it, and hopefully last time I've heard it, it almost felt like Jelly Roll was hedging his bets a little bit by saying, all right, if you don't like how I've been singing these songs, why don't I let somebody else sing it? Let's try this guy. The problem is, this guy, being MGK, sounds like Tom DeLonge with a head cold. He does not sound good. He sounds miserable. He makes this track miserable. And I wholeheartedly agree with you on the echoing thing. Like, that's not a call and response. That's a call and feedback. Like, have you ever been somewhere where you're talking to someone and you can hear yourself on the other line? That's the musical equivalent of this on this track. Like, it doesn't sound good. He sounds whiny and miserable. He sounds flat. He doesn't sound good. Like, why did Jelly Roll do this? Why did MGK do this? Like, to me, it boggles the mind. And I honestly think that if Jelly Roll was singing this song himself, like all parts, it would be fine. It may not be a top track. It may not be in the top 3, but it'd probably be in the top half of my album because I think Jelly Roll sounds all right. I think that the piano is a nice touch. I think it's a nice way to close out the album. Again, MGK just brings this song down so much. And maybe outside of the Browns, probably the biggest L Cleveland took in 2024. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this song by any means. Time of Day, my second least favorite track on the album, and had there not been cricket noises all over the likes of Get By, this is probably my least favorite. So yeah, not great, Bob. Not great. Not a great way to end this album.
All right. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, man. I'm right there with you. It was a bit of a turd to end off the album. It was not a great way to end the record off. But needless to say, 14 tracks up, 14 tracks down, scorecards filled out. We've completely experienced this album. So there's one thing that we can say about it that is, for better or for worse, a good thing to say.
Yes, that is, we did it.
We did it, man. We experienced what it means to be beautifully broken and what it means when a jelly does roll when it is beautifully broken. So I'm going to go first in terms of my overall, summary of the album and my ratings. For me, like I mentioned a little bit at the start of the review here, this album really isn't designed for somebody of my interest, to be honest with you. This is not really my lane, in terms of, general, music and genres, and which is kind of a shame, because, I was optimistically curious about what Jelly had to bring to the table, but now I found out, and, I realized, not for me. However, I will say, though, a general summary, there are some decent moments here where I can really dig into the music, Get By and Unpretty are clear highlights for me. And I'm also a fan of I'm Not Okay, obviously, those songs are my top 3. But, if somebody were to ask me what are 3 good Jelly Roll songs, those are the songs I would push them towards. The rest of the album, though, it's basically a mixed bags. You get some good songs. Well, you get some good songs that are held back for by one reason or another, and you get some really turd songs when the drugs don't work and Time of Day, like those songs are really, really bad. And also Higher Than Heaven, that's a bad song also. But yeah, overall though, like, I'm walking away from this review giving it a rating that is pretty average in my mind. Not in terms of an average rating that I usually give albums, but average in the sense of, like, it's about halfway there. And halfway meaning that I'm going to give Beautifully Broken by Jelly Roll a 5 out of 10.
Wow. 5 out of 10. That's... See, I don't have a problem with that in one sense because, obviously it's your opinion. But to me, that means this album is as bad as the Pearl Jam album, and I don't think I can bring myself to admit that at all. But that being said, I'll discuss my feelings. And my feelings about this album are a bit of a twofold thing. On the one side of it, save for a few tracks, this album's all right. It's pretty good. Like, it has some strong moments, like Unpretty, Winning Streak, I Am Not Okay. I may even throw the likes of Liar in there, or even Heart of Stone. But as an album, it kind of fails, because in a traditional sense, in an objective sense, tracks from the album that are selected as singles are used to promote the album as a whole. Now, thematically, it does. Thematically, it says this is what you're expected to hear on the album, but nothing on the album aside from Unpretty or Winning Streak really elevates itself to the level of the singles that are released from this album. So, realistically, if you want to know what this album is like, just listen to the singles. Save yourself some time. Because in I Am Not Okay, in Liar, you pretty much get the whole vibe of the album. I'll even throw Heart of Stone in there as well, since it's currently out on the radio. So yeah, I am a little higher on this album than you are, because I'm a bit more susceptible to stomp clap and country pop. But I'm not going to rate this album as high as I usually would. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10.
All right, so my 5 and your 6.5 out of 10. Wow, equate the average rating of this album here to be a 5.75 out of 10 because
math.
Math works for everyone. It doesn't discriminate, doesn't hate. It's just math, man. So for me, one of the positives I can say about, digging into this album is the fact that it kind of, I don't want to say forced me, but it gave me a bridge, a gateway, a door opened for me to listen to an album that I've been kind of curious about for a long time. And this is going to be my next album recommendation here. So my next album recommendation is, if you enjoyed Beautifully Broken by Jelly Roll and you're looking for a next album recommendation that I would recommend, well, first of all, considering that I gave this album a 5 out of 10, I'm interested to see why you would want to hear my next album recommendation. But, I'm going to recommend F1 Trillion by Post Malone. I listened to that whole record the other day. And, yeah, it's a fun record. A lot of collabs on there, obviously. But not a bad track on that record, if I could be honest with you. And I thought it was going to be much longer than I anticipated. But the album's goes by pretty quickly. So yeah, my next album recommendation is F1 Trillion by Post Malone.
So before I give my album recommendation, I am surprised to hear you say F1 Trillion, because that is an album where I could safely say I've heard many of those songs on the radio at work as well. Particularly I Had Some Help or Pour Me a Drink. And those are songs that I did not realize were Post Malone songs until I looked up. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I know that song. I know that song. I know that. What? This is he did all of that? But I digress. I appreciate the recommendation. I'll probably give that album a listen soon enough here as well. My next album recommendation is a lot simpler. We have talked about this band before on this show. We have done one of their albums, but I'm not going to recommend that album because, well, we did not really like that album much either. But I will recommend a better album for those who are into the stomp, clap, folk, spiritually oeuvre genre of music. That is the band Mumford & Sons with their album Sigh No More. Not Babble, Sigh No More is the album that I am recommending. Because very much like this album, Beautifully Broken, it deals with themes of struggling with religion, with identity, and does so in a very folksy, rootsy manner that goes down easy on most days. So, yeah, Sigh No More is my next album recommendation.
So, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize, our average rating between me and Matt on Beautifully Broken by Jelly Roll, we averaged out to be a 5.75 out of 10. I recommended F1 Trillion by Post Malone in terms of the next album recommendation, and Matt recommended Sigh No More by Mumford & Sons. So yeah, give those albums a listen if you've gotten to this point in the review and you're just looking for, a next recommendation on your listening journey throughout the day. So yeah, what a review, man. We truly did it, man. This review was a little bit of a gauntlet, but I feel like we did it justice in terms of providing our opinions and going over the tracks.
Yeah. You could even say it was a rather beautifully broken review.
Yeah. True. So, before we officially kick this review into its beautifully broken closet here, we got one more thing to settle up.
Yes, we do, and we are heading into Chapter 2 of 11 in the Ryan Kearns Mystery Miniseries. What do you have cooked up for this week, Ryan?
Alright, so I'm not going to give you any context right out of the gate, because, well, I'll get to the reasons why. I'm going to have you pick between 2 years that these albums were released. And then I'll give you the full context, letting you know what album you chose. Are you ready?
I am ready.
1970 or 1971?
Oh, okay. So you're going back to the 70s for a change. All right. Oh boy. I'm going to go flat. I'm going to go with 1970.
All right. So, 1970. So, originally, I was going to do, ironically enough, an album, albums from the 1980s, specifically from the year 1980. But that'll be for the next crop of albums that I'm going to put up for contention. So the reason why I pivoted, though, with this review is that, unfortunately, ironically enough, a week ago, we lost a music legend in the world. And that legend is Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. So I was gonna put up one of the Black Sabbath albums up for contention later on, in terms of this gauntlet that I threw out to myself in terms of doing older albums on a challenge aspect. So I pivoted to include one of those albums in the choices here, but I expanded it to include another album from Black Sabbath. So yeah, for lack of without any further ado, I'm going to reveal that choice here. And so we're going to be reviewing next week Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
I am ready, and even though I don't use the same rating metrics for this as you do, I will admit that I do in fact own this album on vinyl. So let that be a little bit of a preview to next week's shenanigans.
So yeah, it's gonna be a good review next week. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's been a while or if you've never heard Paranoid by Black Sabbath in terms of a full album setting, make sure that you check out that album before next week's review. That way you can have opinions about that album. You can also have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are going to be bringing to the table. So I'm sorry about how this review turned out in terms of us, disagreeing so much with this review. But yeah, I'm excited for next week, man.
I'm excited too, man. And this is a legend we're talking about, and a legendary album fronted by a legendary singer. So hopefully, when we discuss Paranoid, we got what it takes.